All right, guys, let's jump right into it, okay? This is the article. These are the questions I got to answer. So as we're reading, we're trying to make these following annotations. And really, we're just going to make the annotations as we go, okay? Okay. Students will read the New York Times article 38 who saw murder but didn't call police. Students should, in essence, create their own close reading experience by annotating the article.
That's mine.
So we'll go.
That's my.
Go slide down your thing, baby. Okay. All right. Word choice. The author uses to make the reader feel included. Author's point of view or purpose, and pretty much the standard we're dealing with is the point of view and purpose standard. What is the point of view and purpose of the work we're reading? The author. 3. What text features subheadings, graphics, italics? The author used. The only one I saw was the one at the very end. How were quotation used to achieve different effects? So it says journalists use them sparingly to make certain effects. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Number 5, what text structures, description, comparison, contrast problem did the writer use to make the point? What tools did the writer use to begin and end the article and why? I'm pretty sure he probably began with a good hook and then circle back to it, but we'll see. Okay? Let's read. This is from the 60s. This is an old article, and the story's famous because of what happened. 38 who saw murder didn't call the police. For more than half an hour, 38 respectable, law-abiding citizens in Queens watched a killer stalk and stab a woman in 3 separate attacks in Kew Gardens. Now, there's some controversy about this because there's a report that not as many people saw it as they say. Twice their chatter and the sudden glow of their bedroom lights interrupted him and frightened him off. Press a shh. I'm trying to go. 1, 2, 3. Each time he returned, sought her out, and stabbed her again. Not one person telephoned the police during the assault. That's pretty extremely lazy, I think. One witness called after the woman was dead. But then again, there's some cultures and people, where you just don't call the police. That was 2 weeks ago today. Still shocked is Assistant Chief Inspector Frederick M. Lusson, in charge of the Bureau's detectives and a veteran of 25 years of homicide investigations. He can give a matter-of-fact recitation on many murders, but the Kew Garden slaying baffles him, not because it is a murder, but because there were good people that failed to call the police. As we have reconstructed the crime, he said, the assailant had 3 chances to kill this woman during a 35-minute period. So this is a good quote to add to that quote thing. Number maybe 3 or 4. He returned twice to complete the job. If we had been called when he was first attacked, the woman might not be dead now. This is what the police say happened at 3:20 in the staid, middle-class, tree-lined Austin Street area. 28-year-old Catherine Genovese, who was called Kitty by most everyone in the neighborhood, was returning home from her job as manager of a bar in Hollis, which is in Queens, which I think is kind of a rough neighborhood. What happened? You bite your tongue? Be careful, love. She parked her red Fiat in a lot adjacent to the Kew Gardens Long Island Railroad Station facing Mowbray Place. Like many residents of the neighborhood, she had parked there day after day. So this is a good little summary that he uses. Since her arrival from Connecticut, she's from Connecticut originally. She turned off the lights of her car, locked the door, and started to walk the 100 feet to the entrance of her apartment. Okay, the entrance to the apartment is in the rear of the building because the front is rented to retail stores. At night, the quiet neighborhood is shrouded in the slumbering darkness that marks most residential areas. Miss Genovese noticed the man at the far end of the lot near a 7-story apartment house at 82 Austin Street. She halted. Then nervously, she headed up Austin Street toward Lefferts Boulevard, where there is call to 102nd Police Precincts in nearby Richmond Hill. A call box. I guess she didn't get to call him. She got as far as a street light in front of a bookstore before the man grabbed her. She screamed. Lights went on in the 10-story apartment building on 82 Austin Street, which faces the bookstore. Windows slid open and voices punctuated the early morning stillness. Miss Genovese screamed, "Oh my God, he stabbed me. Please help me. Please help me." From one of the upper windows in the apartment, a man called down, "Let that girl alone." So at least they said something. The assailant looked up at him, shrugged, and walked down Austin Street toward the white sedan parked a short distance away. Miss Genovese struggled to her feet. Lights went out. The killer returned to Miss Genovese, now trying to make her way around the side of the building by the parking lot to get to her apartment. The assailant stabbed her again. "I'm dying," she shrieked. "I'm dying." Windows were opened again and lights went on in many apartments. The assailant got into his car and drove away. Miss Genovese staggered to her feet. The city bus, the 010, the Leopards Boulevard line at Kennedy Airport passed. The bus passed, so apparently she was just laying there. It was 3:35 a.m. The assailant returned. By then, Miss Genovese had crawled to the back of the building where the freshly painted brown doors to the apartment house held out hope for safety. The killer tried the first door. She wasn't there. At the second door, 8262 Austin Street, he saw her slumped on the floor at the foot of the stairs. He stabbed her a third time fatally. It was 3:50 by the time police received the first call from a man who was a neighbor of Miss Genovese. In 2 minutes, they were at the scene. The neighbor, a 70-year-old woman, and another woman were the only persons on the street. Nobody else came forward. The man explained that he had called the police after much deliberation. He had phoned a friend in Nassau County for advice and then had crossed the roof of the building to the apartment of the elderly woman to get her to make the call. "I didn't want to get involved." That's another good quote, he sheepishly told the police. 6 days later, the police arrested Winston Mosley, 29-year-old business machine operator, and charged him with homicide. Mosley had no previous record. He is married, has 2 children, and owns a home, Sutter Avenue in Queens. On Wednesday, the court committed him to Kings County Hospital for psychiatric observation, so he must not wrapped too tight. When questioned by the police, Mosley also said he had slain Mrs. Annie Mae Johnson, Jamaica Queens, Barbara Kralik, Springfield Gardens, in last July. In the Kralik case, the police are holding Alvin Mitchell, who is said to have confessed to this thing, so they had the wrong guy. That's crazy. The police stressed how simple it would have been to have gotten in touch with him. A phone call said one of the detectives would have done it. The police may be reached by dialing 0 for operator or SP ring. Who would call that weird number? Today, witnesses from the neighborhood, which is made up of one-family homes, in the $35,000 to $60,000 range. I guess that'd probably be like $150 to $200 today. With the exception of the 2 apartment homes near the railroad station, find it difficult to explain why they didn't call the police. A housewife, knowingly, if quite casually, said, "We thought it was a lover's quarrel. A husband and a wife," both said. "Frankly, we were afraid." They seemed aware of the fact that even that events might have been different. A distraught woman, wiping her hands in her apron, said, "I didn't want my husband to get involved." One couple, now willing to talk about that night, said they first heard screams. The husband looked thoughtfully at the bookstore where the killer first grabbed Miss Genovese. "We went to the window to see what was happening," he said, "but the light from my bedroom made it difficult to see the street." The wife, still apprehensive, added, "I put out the light, and we were able to see better." Asked why they hadn't called the police, she shrugged and replied, "I don't know." The man peeked out from a slight opening in the doorway to his apartment and rattled off an account of the killer's second attack. Why hadn't he called the police at that time? "I was tired," he said without emotion. "I went back to bed." It was 4:25 a.m. when the ambulance arrived to take the body of Miss Genovese and drove off. Then, the solemn police detective said the people came out. So, guys, moral of the story, I guess you could say, is people, maybe they become accustomed to violence. I don't know if that was necessarily the case, but I think mostly people live in a perpetual state of denial. They don't want to admit something bad like this is happening. So the one guy, he said, "I just went back to sleep." All right, so let's go and look. And that's exactly how the Holocaust was. I mean, I went to Dachau, the first concentration camp, and they show you this video when you get in there, and it's like showing the people of the town upon liberation. All the townspeople got to go in and see kind of what had happened. And so they walk in and like they're seeing the gas chambers and the bodies stacked up. And these are people from neighboring farms and stuff. And they're acting like, "Oh my God, I can't believe all these dead bodies." But I mean, they were right next door. They had to know that was going on. They had to know people were getting burned. I mean, the farms are right there, literally like across the street. So they knew, but they didn't want to admit that they knew, right? And nobody wanted to admit it at this time. During the Holocaust, people didn't want to believe it, even right up until the video came back and the pictures from the liberation. People didn't want to believe that was happening because it would mean admitting man's inhumanity to man. would mean omitting something like that. All right, so word choice. The author version, exciting, suspenseful. Words to suspense this account. Now let's see. If that's all you wrote, that would be okay. I'd like to find some examples. The tail. He has a tail here. Tail. Kitty tail. Okay, here you go, Presley. All right, let's see. Let me look for some examples real quick. You're welcome, baby. All right. Shrouded in the slumbering darkness. That's a good little quote. I use this phrases like this is what's called alliteration. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. This use of alliteration helps build the narrative. The alliteration is the S sound, right? Shrouded in slumbering darkness. 3 S sounds there. Author's point of view or purpose in writing the article, and where in the article that becomes clear. Okay, so I think it's obvious that the writer wanted to show how shocking it was that so many people miss a crime and do nothing. Not even report it. So the place where that becomes obvious to me is almost immediately. It's right off the bat. Right away we see that he says for more than half an hour. Right away we see the author is appalled by the time and coming back 3 times. Yes, let me see. All right, what text features the author used? Like I said, the only subheadings or graphics I saw were at the very end. You're welcome, Lovey. The brutal murder of Kitty. This might not be from the author, but this is what we're going to say. This is in italics. The brutal murder of Kitty Genovese and disturbing lack of action by the neighbors became emblematic. Violence and apathy. The Genovese syndrome. Okay. So, the author uses italics to explain the connection between that has come to be termed the author used quotations effectively to make points. He used matter-of-fact quotes from the police to demonstrate the simple fact that all someone had to do was pick up the phone. Okay, that's a specific example without really citing it too much. Number 5. Comparison and contrast. He used narrative structure pretty well. You know, let's just say that. Let's say the author used narrative structure in the form of summary to lay out the initial or lay out the crime in the opening of the story, right? Because an author is supposed to be who, what, when, where, why, and how, right? They tell you that in a newspaper article, and you as an author should do that. That's a good technique for writing if you have writer's block. Think about this. Who is it I'm talking about? What happened? Where was it? When did it happen? Why did it happen? And how? Okay, an author will always tell you that. An author of a journalist is supposed to always tell you that. What tools did the writer use to begin and end the article, and why? Okay. All right, I would say that this is a very shocking fact, right? And I think he started that. He used that as the hook. The shocking fact that for more than half an hour, 38 people watched this woman get stalked and stabbed. All right, that's how he started. And he ended with a quote. The people didn't come out until there was something to see, right? They didn't want to see the murder. They just wanted to see the drama afterwards, right? All right, so I will say this. The author uses an amazing fact as a hook, and at the end, he concludes with a quote that demonstrates how the people violence, but what's the word? Gathered together, or they flock to the drama. Isn't that how it always is? All right, guys. So look, that's a pretty good little analysis. You don't have to write all that, but I feel like those are pretty good ways to answer. Otherwise, you're just going to be struggling. All right, just going to make them red so there's no confusion. And you guys won't see this except on the video, so get it now while you can. Unless you're doing it on your own, which a lot of people do. A lot of people do it on their own without really watching the video, which is fine. But the video is there to model, just in case. Okay?
I want milk. What milk? And a spoon.
You want milk and a spoon?
Milk and a spoon.
Oh, in the spoon. Okay.
And get up.
Get up and get your milk in here?
Get up.
All right. Okay, guys, signing off.